You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com to see the many different shirts and other merchandising options we offer. I'm your co-host, Aaron McTeer. Other co-hosts you may have seen walking out of a Great Clips with a big old smile on his face. You've probably seen him at a dirt track. He is Scott Bally. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, Aaron. How are you?
Living the dream as always. So we have a great show today. Our guest is former IRL racer, drove in several Indy 500s, Robby McGhee. Before we get into that, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or everywhere else our podcast can be found.
Yeah, Robby, good interview. Had some technical issues. We apologize if the audio is a little off. He was, doing a call in, and internet connections are what they are sometimes. But there again, there's another guy I didn't know a lot about, but I found him to be interesting. It was an interesting talk. Hope to hook up again with him in the future, and possibly if we do some sort of mobile studio or something. We can possibly do one where we're at the racetrack with him around St. Louis because he lives in the St. Louis area.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was a really good talk.
And he's another one, like a lot of guests we've interviewed. He has a normal job outside of racing now, and as he said, and like I said, a lot of people say this when we interview, they don't get to talk about racing much, so they love the ability to be able to get on with us and talk about racing. And that's what he said, that he'd love to come back on and talk about racing again. His family is in the insurance business. I think he's running it now, so he deals with insurance and all that pretty much every single day. So I don't blame him. I would need a break from that as well.
Yeah, the insurance business has got to be a pretty difficult one, I would believe. But yeah, it was a super nice guy. And again, it was just interesting, and and you just get to kind of know these people's backstories a little bit, which I always find really interesting because, especially those RL years, man, guys would just kind of come and go. And I'm not saying Robby did, but some people did, and you never really knew much about them or where they come from or even where they went. So it was really good.
All right, absolutely. Before we get into that, recent racing news. So what we got going on, Scott?
Man, big weekend of racing. F1 had a little controversy. Lewis Hamilton wins again. That's not the controversial part. I guess he and Max Verstappen got into it and on the track. And, I haven't seen it other than just one quick replay. It could have just been a racing deal, which I'm sure it was.
Right. It looked like he it looked like Lewis was holding his lines. It didn't look like he was really chopping them off. So I think it was just a racing move. And I know Max had pretty hard impact. I think he was admitted into the hospital, but I know he's been released and he's okay, which we're obviously glad to hear.
Yeah, so that was really good to see that he was released and he's okay. I guess he has unfollowed Lewis on social media, so the war is real. Other racing news, you went and saw, I did not go and see, what some people are calling one of the most historic days in sprint car racing, the King's Roll, where they actually ran two of them. They ran last year's and this year's. And who was the winners?
So the first winner was Tyler Courtney. I was not at that one. So we just watched the one in the evening, which I think was this year's, right? Or was it backwards?
Backwards.
So it would have been last year's. This is crazy.
So people are asking if they can add it to Kyle's win total from last year.
Oh man, yeah, that's weird. I have they ever done this before in racing, like with any kind of racing?
Not that I know of, no.
Right. So, and then obviously Kyle Larson won the one in the evening, which was last year's, and that was the one I saw. And yeah, Kyle Larson, he's he's a big deal. I'll just say that. I mean, he was like seventh, and within like 2 laps, he was up in the front.
Yeah, I got to watch the highlights of it. He was he was fast in the evening. Kind of a funny stat on that is that's the only King's Royal he's ever made in all of his attempts. With
Really?
all of his success in open wheel racing, that is the first King's Royal he has made, and obviously he's 1 for 1 as far as
Mhm.
features. And that car, and hats off to Paul Silva and his crew, because that car was stripped down after the first, where he got into a crash at the earlier race in the B feature, the semi, whatever you like to call it. And that car was hurt pretty bad. They stripped it completely down, basically, left the motor in it, rebuilt it, and Kyle did what he did. And so, hats off to him. And Tyler Courtney, I got to give a big shout out to him. He's a Tim Clausen, Brian Clausen protege. I mean, he really studied under both of them. He races for Tim today, along with the Marshall family. And he is the king, kind of really the king of Eldora right now. Anytime he rolls in Eldora with a race car, he's a odds-on favorite to win. And it was really good to see him get a King's Royal. So congratulations to that group. Um, what other racing? SRX. SRX had their final last night.
So Chase Elliott won the race, and no surprise, Tony Stewart won the championship.
Tony
And
Stewart.
something I didn't notice, he was actually the last champion of the IROC series, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and it was really neat that they had Jay Signori there. Jay, along with Les Richter, and of course Roger Penske was part of the IROC series, but Jay really ran that deal, and so they had Jay there last night to watch, which was really great of him. And good racing. Nashville, it's kind of an interesting thing because some reports are that hey, they're going to get racing back in Nashville, and other reports are that place is done. It just don't have the coffin sealed yet because they're building that soccer stadium literally right against the racetrack. And so many people think that it's a done deal. I mean, that place was packed last night. I don't know what it holds. I have to believe that they would have to put another at least 25,000 seats in there to really make money, which would mean you have to go along the back straightaway. There's a lot of parking issues, a lot of neighborhood issues. So who knows? But if this was one of the last big events they ever put on there, it was a good one. And SRX, they really went in there. I mean, SRX all year went to these venues, these smaller venues, put on these great shows, brought these fans out, and really did well for themselves. So hats off to that group, Ray Abraham, Tony Stewart. And they really, in a lot of ways, I mean, you're going to look back at this, and I mean, did they really make a star out of Ernie Francis? I mean, very possible. They let the world know who he was. Haley Deegan really showed well. She really came off well in that whole deal. And then Marco Andretti may have saved his. I mean, if you want to put it this way, I mean, may have given his energy back to want to go race. There is some talk that he's going to Xfinity racing. So, he ran good in those cars. He was competitive. So that's going to be really interesting. And I hope Marco does. I hope Marco finds his love for the sport. Obviously, I don't know the guy, but it just seems like I don't know. Sometimes it's really hard to do things with your family. And I wonder if that's what we've seen over the years. And hopefully hopefully he's found his love for the sport again, though.
Yeah, he may just need, different atmosphere. I know in the past there was talks he was going to go to a different IndyCar team.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you just need a different atmosphere. I mean, there's a lot of cases, if we look back at time, of people switching teams, and it's a totally different deal.
Agreed. And I think, I think maybe he wants to be his own man. And again, I don't know this, but you kind of wonder if maybe he doesn't feel the weight of those shadows a little bit, and he just maybe wants to be his own man, and maybe this is how he can do it, and I hope he does. USAC midgets were out in the Plain States. Great racing every night. The young guys, Persley and Axum, won races. A little controversy out there, people getting into each other. The young drivers and even some of the older drivers were having a little conflict amongst themselves. So the USAC midget scene is pretty. I mean, it's that time of the year. We're entering August, which is the dog days of the summer, and it's the hard days for the teams. And I think the heat started getting to them a little bit out there. And but great racing, and hats off to all the winners: Tanner Thorson, Persley, Axum. Hats off to them. They all did great jobs. So it was really great racing this week. It was, I mean, as solid a week of racing as I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else we're missing?
Man, not that I really know of. Just again, thank everybody for viewing our videos, and again, the numbers keep going up a little bit here and there, and people are finding it, and we just want to say thanks to everybody.
Absolutely, definitely. Have met some great people that we'll definitely have back on the podcast. I will say we recorded one last week with a former Indy 500 winner, so definitely very excited to be releasing that interview in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it was a great interview. Current driver, Indy 500 winner, and really good talk. One thing I found out, not that I want to get too much into it, another thing you just kind of notice when talking to him, he seems like a really laid back guy, but you can sense that real competitive streak that he has. He's just kind of quiet about it.
Absolutely, and a lot of guys, and a lot of people probably realize this. They're a lot different when you get them away from the racetrack. They get in the racetrack and they're in work mode. I mean, that's their job. End of the day, that's their job. That's how they bring money home, put food on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's 1,000% correct.
Well, I think we will go ahead and get right into the Robby McGhee interview.
Everybody enjoy.
Our guest today drove an IndyCar for several seasons and competed in 5 Indy 500s. He received the 1999 Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year. We were joined by Robby McGhee. Hey, Robby, how's it going?
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Doing great. How are you? Thanks for being on.
It's been a long day, and it's nice to get to talk about something I enjoy. And boy, I can say it's I can't remember exactly where you guys are, assuming around Indianapolis, but it's hotter than heck here in Missouri, St. Louis.
Yep, I'm just about 4 blocks from the track, and Scott's not that much further than me.
Oh, that's great. Right on.
I can see the pagoda from my front yard, actually.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I'd love to be that close to such a, place that's so close to my heart.
It was kind of bad last year, though. No fans allowed at the race and being able to hear the cars the whole month and not being able to go. That was kind of bad.
That's got to be torture. I mean, it's been a rough year. I mean, it's been a hard, different year for everybody. But that's got to be specifically challenging, being right there and hearing the cars.
Yep, and working from home. Yep, no, for sure. So you had a pretty decent long career. How did you first get interested in racing?
Interestingly, my mom is from Anderson, Indiana, and her father used to take my mom and her sister to all the dirt track races around and all the racing, the Indy 500. So it really comes from her side of the family. My brother and I and our family, we would get up when we were 5 and 6 and 7 years old. We weren't really sure how or why, but we would get up and we just watch this race all day, man. And it became Memorial Day weekend has much greater meaning than just the Indy 500. But that's how we came to know what happened on that weekend, and it was like a holiday for us. So just growing up, we would wake up and watch the Indy 500, and a lot of kids want to be a fireman, a policeman, a astronaut, whatever. I wanted to be an IndyCar driver, and it's interesting. Throughout my growing up, I wanted to be an IndyCar driver always, but I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But I loved speed. I always had fun little fast go-karts or, recreational karts. I didn't do any professional kart racing like a lot of the guys do now. But so that's really how I got involved when I was younger, we used to go to the time trials, never for the race. And then when I got in high school, I think I got to go to my first race. And it was just, I can remember walking around, looking at the cars and just being in awe. Once I drove and was around it enough and around racing and stuff, it became, I just always have to pinch myself and say, don't get too comfortable with this. Remember what this was like, growing up and what, seeing it from the other side. So for me, it was a dream. I got to live my dream career. I've done a lot of speaking and telling kids, telling people, just keep your mind to it. You can do what you want. But I mean, in this case, there's a lot of really good drivers that I raced with coming up that weren't at the right place at the right time. Probably better drivers than me weren't at the right place at the right time, and they topped out in Formula Ford or Formula Atlantic or whatnot. But I started racing when I was 15 or 16. Actually, I was 15. He sent my mom and I, who I mentioned was also very interested in racing, to Skip Barber Racing School. It was either at IRP or Sebring, I can't remember, but I did a couple of them. Went through the racing school, and as I learned that I was somewhat of a natural at it. My mom would race, and these other folks in the class, they'd be talking about, okay, so I'm going to wait till I pass the tree, and then I'm going to hit the brakes, and I'm going to turn in. And I'm gonna hit the apex right at this point. And people would ask me like, "Hey, where are you turning in?" Man, I don't know. I'm turning in where it feels right. And ultimately you learn that your brain is processing all that. I just think about it differently. I don't think, okay, I'm gonna see the 200-yard mark or whatever on the braking zone, and I'm gonna brake there. My brain is calculating all that for me. I'm braking, where I need to, so I can focus on, racing and racing fast. So I started doing really, really well, raced in the school series, went over to Formula 2000. When I went to Formula 2000, my mom kind of retired from her career, if you will, and ultimately, just became my greatest supporter. So it was real, she was with me at all the races. And I did a little bit in the SCCA, and then we went pro racing in the Formula Ford 2000, which opened for a bunch of IRL, like between 96 and 2000. And then just, the next logical step would have been to go to Atlantic or Indy Lights at the time. There were two series. But the problem was, they're talking about $1 million budgets, and you weren't even, there was no exposure. You could turn on, ESPN Ocho or whatever at 3 a.m. and catch it. But there was no exposure, and for about the same amount of money at the time, you could, it was when the IRL was fairly established. There were a couple of rough years at the start, but 99 was my first year, and there were good drivers, good teams. I went up with my team owner, Dave and Linda Conti, who were great, and then we just got in the race and just shit went well. Excuse my French. It went really well, I felt good in the car. I always felt good in the Indy car. It never felt like it was too fast. It's just like, so we went out, we tested a couple times, and it was Greg Ray's old car that Tom Knapp ran for him. We had two Delars in 99. We called one Bert and the other Ernie. I didn't name him that day, but so Bert was always the backup. Never got to drive that one, but always drove this one that came from Tom Knapp and Greg Ray, and just put ourselves in the right place at the right time. I remember, obviously had a rough race in 99. My crew chief, it was my first real race. I had two rough starts. The first race was in Charlotte, which got red flagged halfway through because a fan died, which is awful. So we didn't really get a full race, and then the next, then it was the month of May, and here we are coming into this deal where this is when it was the real month of May, when you're up there driving 230. For 30 days straight. Right. Paul Tracy, I think, or someone used to say, I love Indy, but man, I just, when you drive that many damn laps, something's bound to happen. And at Indy, it's going to be big because you're going so fast. But so I didn't really mind the abbreviated schedule. I liked the full month, though, because you didn't have to race every day. It was more casual and relaxed practice schedule. But went up there, and here I am. The first time I ever drove around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was in that bus that the tour guy gives you, and I'm sitting here thinking, holy crap, this is narrow. You start 3 cars wide here. And it still felt like that. Every time I started there, I'm like, this is crazy. I love it. It's tradition. It is what it is. But, 3 cars side by side, especially when you're in the back, man, when it goes green, you can't see, you can't breathe. it's just, it's probably better now with the windshields. But at the time, it was just, there's just experiences you have there that, I had on the track that I'll never that I'll never forget. There's nothing really like it. But anyway, went up there and did it okay. Steve got hurt during the race. That was really, really bad. I was ready to get out of the car. They lied to me and told me he was fine and watching the race from the hospital bed, which I'm glad they did. And about 3/4 through the race, I said, "Hey, Dave, where's the nearest rookie? And where's the highest placed rookie?" And he goes, "Screw that. We're going to win the race. We're not going to go for," because I'm just thinking I want to finish the highest rookie. And he's like, "No,
Right.
we're gonna win the race." Because Dave and I ran multiple years of Formula 2000 together, and we won races, so we were used to winning races together. So anyway, ended up getting fifth and rookie of the year, and it was a good race. Obviously everything about it was dedicated to Steve, because after I found out, we didn't even know if he was going to live. But it's funny, Steve emails me once a week now. He's always sending something funny, something related to cars, something to some sort of communication. So he obviously survived, and I think we changed the sport of racing in terms of going over the wall pit crew guys. So anyway, I just answered a really long answer to your short question.
Oh no, that's
so
perfect.
I probably talked a little bit too much.
Oh, hey man, that's what this show's for. Go ahead, Aaron.
Before 99, did you ever drive any ovals, or was that your first time in an IndyCar in an oval?
No, so we ran, interestingly, in the U.S. Formula 2000. It was a series where they did start running ovals. I ran ovals 2 or 3 years in a row, but it was only 2 or 3 ovals
Right.
out of a 15 race schedule. In every oval, man, I was leading the race. I mean, I immediately where I learned that I liked ovals was all these guys are running the racing line, and I'm just driving around on the outside. I mean, I learned that, I guess I translated well to understanding how banking works. But I remember my first real oval where I'm like, man, this is awesome. It's like being on a roller coaster. I was at a Key Tours, was a blue and red 1997 Van Diemen 2000 car, and the thing was set up so well that I could just, I would just drive around the outside of people very comfortably up in that area. Now, I learned pretty quickly in IndyCar that area gets a little dirty from
marbles and everything.
From marbles and stuff, and it's remarkably scary what it feels like when you go in there, because you're in a car where all of a sudden you've just got massive grip, and then it's like you're going ice skating, except without skates. Getting up there is no good. But in the 2000s, I raced ovals. I won ovals. I finished in the top 3. I finished on the podium almost every oval that we did. I learned there. I'm trained. I'm a road course trained, driver. I don't think there's any, and it was cool for me to come together, race with guys who've never run road courses but ran midgets, which are and sprints, which are basically more power than an Indy car on like a 5-foot wheelbase. It's like, and I'm thinking, man, that'd be awesome to go have fun doing it. I never got to do it. I still to this day would love to go drive a sprint car just to see what it feels like, because to me, going and watching, I think it's such an awesome talent watching, these sprint and midget cars running on dirt tracks, because it's foreign to me. But the cars are similar enough. You race a Formula car. Formula car is a Formula car. I don't know if I'd say what I do is more in line with what racing an Indy car and an oval. Racing a Formula car on a road course is closer than an Indy car and an oval versus getting into a car you're sliding sideways in dirt. But I don't know. I've never done that. So I loved racing ovals. One of my main regrets is that I never got to drive. I got out before Indy car went back to road courses, because I think it would have been fun just to go out and be able to throw the car around like you would any like you have to on a road course. But no regrets. I look back on my career and say, I wish I could have stayed in longer. There's 3 or 4 points in my career that could have changed the direction of it. Some of which I had control over, some of which I had no control over it. I'm walking away. I'm happy. I got a family now. I've started into another business and stayed busy. I got to live my childhood dream, my life dream, really, and it was great. Had I gotten the ride that Sam Hornish got with Panther, that I sat in the car twice and tested, but couldn't do it because of the weather. Because it rained or something happened. Sorry, I just got a little interruption there. I'm sure I wish I got to test with them, because that was a ride after Treadway that I was, competing for, and I never got to drive the car. things happen for a reason. I got to drive for John in 2003, and I remember getting in a car with 0 laps, and it was perfectly set up, and I just, put pedal to the metal, and it stuck, and it was fast, and it was, it was nice to get to drive for him. But, I kind of had I wouldn't say it was a long career. I think I had 5 Indy 500s over 6 years. I will say there's not much worse than missing an Indy 500. So every time I get out there and I'm watching this now, I just really sympathize for the guy that's on the bubble, because there's not much of a worse feeling as a young kid. I mean, once you get older, you get experience, you realize you can't control a lot of stuff, and I probably would have done better. But as a 26-year-old, 27-year-old in that position, man, I thought the world was going to end. I mean, in 2002, we didn't make the race because that big wreck we had.
Yeah, we were kind of laughing to each other when you were talking about the dirt cars, because I actually come from a dirt racing background, sprint cars and midgets, and
oh, awesome! Yeah.
I've been around it my whole life. And actually, I grew up in Southern Illinois, not far from St. Louis. And St. Louis, for the fans out there who may not know, has been at times a real hotbed for that type of racing, for midget racing especially, but sprint cars as well from time to time. And so we did a ton of racing in that area as I was growing up, and my dad did before that, and he worked on cars. And but
that's awesome. Yeah.
And Aaron and I were just having a discussion last night about sprint cars and midgets, about drivers, like, just if we had one, we could let drivers on the show who could get in them and stuff. It's just funny that you were talking about it.
It looks fun. I was just watching. Everyone always asks me, "Do you watch every single race?" You know what? I try to watch IndyCar races. I pay attention. I stay. I stay on top of it, but I'm not adamant about it. I don't go to them. I'll go to the Indy 500 when we have the autograph session because I love it. But someone finally convinced me to watch. You got to watch this Formula One show on Netflix. Drive to Survive or whatever it's called. And at first, I'm like, I watched like one episode. I'm like, man, I don't really want to watch this. I live this and so on. But then all of a sudden, I started. I started like enjoying it as reality TV, like getting into the figuring out who I'm following, who my favorite drivers. And man, the last time I watched Formula One before seeing that was when Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher were competing. That's Williams, which is now the worst team, and Ferrari, even Benetton back then. But one of the things I saw on it was, I guess, Haas is an owner in Formula One, and the same Haas that I guess Tony Stewart partners with. And they had, I don't remember which driver it was, but he came over and drove one of Tony's sprint cars.
Magnussen.
Magnussen,
yeah. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. That's what prompted that. When you talk about, an IndyCar driver is a lot closer to a sprint car than a Formula One driver who's probably never seen an oval before. So watching Magnussen rip around on a sprint car on dirt was pretty cool.
I'll tell you this. I've been around the sport. Like I said, my first race, I was 4 weeks old. And I've seen the sport, I've never really truly been out of the sport since then. And I contend this. I contend that if you're a race car driver, you're a race car driver. I feel that Kyle Larson could go run Formula One, and I truly feel that there's a lot of Formula One guys who can come run sprint cars. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to have the success as quick or something like that, but I look at somebody even like IndyCar guys like Tony Kanaan or Scott Dixon. They could run in sprint cars, midgets.
Oh, yeah.
It would take, it'd take a few races to get used to it. Within 10 shows, you're making shows, running mid-pack. And then after that, after they got enough experience, 10, 15, 20 shows, man, they could run up front. I mean, that's my opinion, and people can crucify me for it if they want. But I've always felt that race car drivers are race car drivers. That's why Parnelli was able to do what he did. Mario, Foyt, McCluskey, all those guys. It was just the time period they had to drive all the different cars. Whereas later on, you didn't have to.
Yeah, I agree with you actually. I mean, I think that's accurate. The only thing that I would say is a little different, maybe. And again, I think there'd be time is the only time I've ever driven a NASCAR was. Or a stock car was in the Richard Petty driving school, but because of who I was, they let me go out and run it kind of harder than I guess normal. And boy, I felt like I was driving an RV around an oval. It's like, whoa.
Well, they said,
but I agree with you.
They said that one of the problems I was talking to some guys that worked for when Montoya ran for Chip and in the stock cars. And they said that one of the problems that he had, he just liked overrunning the cars. Like they said, actually, you'd take downforce off, he'd go faster because that way, he was just wanting to overrun them all the time, and because he's used to running that hard. And they said that that was one of the things they just always kind of had a thing with him. Like he just was out running the car because, like you said, they're so heavy. You got to be so careful on the tires. You kill the tires and that sort of thing. But I truly feel that race car drivers are race car drivers, and I think talent is talent, and that's just how I've always felt about
it. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's all about having. I mean, what's interesting is, and I felt like I may not have been the fastest driver. I had a really feel for the car in a I guess you could call it a sensitive butt. Like the engineers would always say, we can look at all the lasers, we can look at all the everything, but there's nobody that feels the car like the actual driver, and the driver feedback is absolutely the most important. And I remember I could notice everything. If you soften the bump on one of the suspension, I could feel it sink in a little bit. And at first you're feeling it, and you're like, uh-oh, is that my tire going, or am I settling on the shocks? And I could drive a car. Which will just take me to the next thing. The best car I ever drove in my career with IndyCar was with Treadway. I got out of the number 5 car that Ari got out of. I got into it. My engineer Jeff Britton, he set up a car a really soft car, and I think I remember hearing some of the Formula One drivers. I think Johnny Herbert came over, and then some subsequently came over afterwards. They had a really hard time driving a car that would take a set. And when obviously, I think you guys probably know what that means. But when you turn in, the car leans over and then sets, but it
right.
moves. And I don't think the Formula One guys are used to that movement. And I remember Greg Beck, who was running Johnny at the time, said he just can't get comfortable with the car setting, and you can't set up. I guess you can set up a really stiff car, but it just isn't the fastest way around Indy. But yeah, I think I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent there. I don't remember where we were going from it, but I think you're right. I at the end of the day, a good race car driver is going to be able to understand and learn the equipment they're in and translate that into how to go fast, because it's the concepts and the dynamics are all the same. It just applies a little bit differently based on if you're in a 1,200 pound car or if you're in a 4,000 pound car, but they're still there.
Yeah.
One thing we've kind of talked about with some drivers, we just interviewed Roberto Guerrero the other day, and one thing he was talking about was with Indy, like most ovals, you can set up a car and it can be almost perfect for the oval, but the problem with Indy is each corner is slightly different than the other one, so it's hard to set up a car that's absolutely perfect for every corner.
Indy, I mean, I don't want this to sound corny, but the track is alive. I mean, it's not the same every time you go around it, because there's going to be a little more sun that's coming down. There's going to be a little slight gust of wind that's different. I mean, when you're on the ragged edge, both mechanically and aerodynamically, which you are, 1 mile an hour wind difference going a little different is going to blow across the aerodynamics a different way and push your nose down a little sooner. Or I mean, it makes a huge difference. And I mean, a mile oval, you're going to get the same weather all the way around. But Indy, man, you could have different weather at every single corner, and it's wild. I mean, it's either turn 3 or turn 1 are going to be the scary ones. But man, I had days at Indy where turn 2 I couldn't figure it out. It's like turn 2 should be easy because you've already scrubbed all your speed going through 1. It should be the easiest corner out there. I mean, and then you saw like the poor kid who crashed on the last corner of the last lap of the Indy 500. It's like, how in the world? I mean, like there's just no way that can happen, but it happened because something changed and something was different. And, Indy deserves more respect than any track out there, because it doesn't matter who you are, it'll come up and kick your ass if you're not respecting it.
What I always say is it lulls you to sleep. It lulls you in. It allows you to think that it's going to be the same, and then all of a sudden it'll just jump up and get you.
It can get comfortable. I mean, I've been comfortable in Indy before, and then it's like you almost forget how fast you're going.
That's right.
Because it's so immense. And until and the craziest thing about Indy is like you go up there to practice, and it's, you see the same thing for 30 days, which is a, gray, you see gray around you because that's what the grandstands are. Then all of a sudden you go there on race day, it's like, my whole sight picture changed. And you basically drive these things subconsciously off your sight picture, and all of a sudden, it's Technicolor.
Right.
It's like, okay, now it's different. It's just a place that's so special, so unique, and just requires the utmost respect, because it'll get you, and unfortunately it's killed people. I mean, it is a special, amazing, dangerous, you name it. There's just so many adjectives that can describe it. But Roberto's awesome, man. I remember watching him race. I grew up watching him race. He knows his way around there, as well as anybody, and he's right. Just, I mean, because you can't get confident there. I mean, you can, but you better have hands as fast as Juan Montoya, which, when you mentioned him, it made me think about following him when he was in a Ganassi car and I was in the Treadway car. I mean, of all the people I've been behind, like I would give him the most props for being an amazing driver. I watched him cross, after a yellow on cold tires, full tanks. I watched him had me just go in full, not lifting into turn one, crossed up, elbows over, elbows in the air, and I'm like, okay, you can go. I'll catch that up, but I'm not, I'm not following you into that one. He did it though, no problem, just no fear.
That first year he won the 500, I was there and I watched it, and I thought to myself, personally speaking for myself, I thought, I felt at the time he was probably the greatest race car driver I had ever seen in his prime. I didn't get to see AJ in his prime. I didn't get to see Mario in their prime. I saw him when I was a kid, but they had already run the 500, and they were a little older, at that time. And I felt,
I think he's,
I felt like, for me personally, Juan was the greatest race car driver I'd ever witnessed in person in his prime.
I'll concur with you, and I was on the track with him, and that's when I saw it, and that's when I recognized it. I watched him racing over at Ganassi and kart for a while, but when I was still in Formula 2000, and then it was a huge honor. I got to hand him his Rookie of the Year trophy. Also, not real consequential given that he won the race, but it still was cool for me at the event. But I remember, man, that Treadway car I was in, my whole day ended halfway through the race because of a $7 spark plug. But we had a car. I mean, I remember passing Vassar, and it was just Montoya in front of me, and that's when we did that restart. And then I think one restart later, I went to give it gas, and there was nothing there because the spark plug broke. But I got to watch that guy mid-race Indy 500, right behind him, running first and second, and like understanding that, I'm gonna have to get a really good run to pass this guy, because I'm never gonna do it on the start, because he's just, going in flat everywhere with like no fear. But I guess my point is, I really concur with what you're saying, and I had a really good seat to judge that from, behind him in the track.
Right. Let me. You were talking about when you get all the color in the stands. From a driver's perspective, and you were talking about sight lines and that sort of thing. Does the track feel narrower even more when you get all that color right there on the front straightaway when you have fans on both sides? Does it feel more confined?
I don't know, man. Like this is going to sound funny, but the biggest difference between empty stands and full stands is all the damn hot dog wrappers that are flying around the car.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
To me, that's it. I'm like, what the heck? What is this? Like, I haven't seen this all. I haven't seen this all. All month, and now all I'm seeing is hot dog wrappers flying off my visor and stuff as I'm going down the straightaway. It's a little different, but you adjust quickly. I mean, I don't even remember my rookie year. I started in the 27th. Is that that's second inside? One or the second to last row.
Yeah.
And I just remember starting, and I don't remember anything about it. I remember it was just the air was brown, I guess, from exhaust, and I just said, dear Lord, get me there. I'll race hard afterwards, but I'm not going to crash going to the first corner. And it was nuts. I mean, comfortable. Starting in the Indy 500 for me anyway, never gets comfortable. But just after all that kind of fades away, you're just in your office, doing the job. I would do the race 100 times over before qualifying, like, because the race, you're in full race trim, the car's comfortable. Racing in Indy is easy because it feels like slow motion, because you're going 10 or 15 miles an hour slower than you are in qualifying. Qualifying is where you just gotta, I mean, you're on the track by yourself, so everybody knows if you lift, and if you lift, you're going to go slower. So you just got to tell yourself. Sometimes I put my left foot over my right foot. I'm not going to lift going into turn one on my first lap, it's just, you're on the ragged edge, and it's just hairball. Your nuts are in your chest, I guess, is how you'd like to put it. Where in the race, it's like you're kind of just going around in fourth or fifth gear, and just, it's not fast. It feels like people are hitting the brakes going into the turns almost until you get sorted out. So it's just a really different feel. And for me, other than trying not to get run into, the race is a much easier drive than the qualifying. The qualifying is just, balls out. I don't know how it got with the new cars when they started. I was never a fan of the cars they had about, 3, 4, 5 years ago with all the airfoil. But it looked to me like they were driving flat pretty easy at Indy. I don't know, but it sort of felt, looking at the TV gauges and everything, it looked like everyone's just wide open, and it was just a matter of trimming your car up because it had so much downforce built into it.
Right.
But the new cars kind of look like the old ones. I like them, other than the windshield, which I, frankly, am not a huge fan of. But if it keeps drivers safe, I'm for it, obviously. To get away from kind of the purist. But I guess if you could do that, everyone should still be driving front engine roadsters, right?
That's right.
Exactly. So you're talking a little bit about your first year at Indy. Did you ever get a moment where it just felt surreal? Like, because you were talking about, watching the race when you were a little kid, like, maybe the first couple laps, it just kind of hits you like, man, I'm driving an Indy 500 right now.
You cut out there a little bit, but I think I heard what you said. I mean, like, so I still to this day, get massive goosebumps, when during the ceremonial aspect of before the race, when they sing Back Home Again in Indiana, when start your engines. That, there's no great for 10 minutes. Even when I go stand in the or even when I'm in the audience. Or last time I went, I took my kids for the first time ever, and they put us. Typically, they put us in a suite. The last time I went, it was a couple years ago. They just put us on the inside grandstands, which was fine because you get to really experience the full aspect of it. But to me, there's just nothing that is, the pre-ceremony or pre-race ceremony for Indy is just, it gives me massive goosebumps. Being there on the track, in the car, the first time, the second, third time, it was my job, so it felt a little bit like work too. So I wasn't able to really take it in. I always said, like, it was such a big event, and we would always, everybody would always be up. My friends would come up, everyone I knew. Everyone's having such a good time. And I remember I was just basically a nervous wreck, superstitious, kind of doing my thing. Like, I'm going to go to dinner. I'm going to go to my hotel room by myself. I'm going to not do anything. And I just always used to remember saying, God, I can't wait to come back to Indy where I can just watch and drink a beer with you guys. Because it's such a fun event.
Yeah.
And I've had plenty. There's nothing like Indy, the way it feels, just everything about it. Yes. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And I can't imagine what it's like to be a driver. And it's funny. You talk about that, and it's really, it seems like just from all the guys we've interviewed, I think some of them don't come back because they still, I think they still got those competitive juices. Yeah. And it's hard to put that in a way. But then the others, they revere it actually a little more today than they did then, and even when they drove it, And so I think as the farther away you get, the more you realize what you've accomplished, and
1,000%, man. I didn't want to go, like, so my last race was in 2004. I didn't want to go. I don't think I went in 2005 or 2006 because, like, you're right. Like, what am I doing here watching? I ought to be driving there. This is dumb. I'm on the wrong side of the fence here. Like, right, wrong side of the track. But then, I I quickly realized, there's more in life for me. I'm not, nothing against them, but I know some of the drivers that stop racing and they just walk around with their helmets in hand, up and down racetracks, and I'm like, I can't do that. I've done this before. This is amazing. I've got an opportunity over here. I'm going to take it. I'm going to build a business, for my second chapter in life. I got married. I'm having kids. Like, I'm not going to walk with my helmet in hand. But again, to me now, now that I've got all this other stuff with the kids, the family, it's like, wait, it sounds kind of fun to go walk with my helmet in hand, right? A little bit.
Right.
But no, I mean, it took about probably, it took 2 or 3 years. And then I realized I got into the same business my father was in, which was insurance. And I started working with a lot of large general contractors and developers. And all of a sudden I realized, man, these guys love Indy, so like, I'm going to go win some business, but I'm going to take them all behind the scenes. I'm going to give them the whole deal with Indy as if they were on the inside with the driver, which they were. And I started utilizing it that way. And I started really enjoying, showing this to people who probably appreciated me for more than what I was doing with them from their risk management and insurance stuff. And the folks I work with, again, many of them love all kinds of racing. So it worked out well. I was able to utilize it to help my current business. I was able to go back. I don't know that many folks there now, except when I go back. Obviously, I know Doug Bowles because I drove for him, and he was a close friend while I was driving. And I met some of the guys that run it now, Mark Miles, and I think he's still there. I don't know, maybe, but I just don't pay attention. But what I love to do is go to these autograph sessions, and I see all the guys I raced with, and I also see guys that I get to, and this is timely because I was saddened by his death, but the last time I got to go to the autograph session, I'm sitting right next to Bobby Unser. And I watched Bobby Unser. Remember, I was telling you when I was a 5 or 6 year old kid. I watched him in that blue and I think it was a Norton car, maybe. I don't know. I think that's the one he won.
Yeah, 81.
Man, that is my guy. That is so awesome. And here I am sitting next to him. I'm sitting next to him and Parnelli Jones. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, now that I'm a step back from it, and here I am. I'm back to being a fan again, and I'm sitting here with really my idols growing up. As not as, I won't say as an equal, because those guys were, they won the Indy 500. I mean, but as someone on the same side of the fence, I'm like, this is really cool. So that's what I love about going back to Indy, and it's more so that than even seeing the race, because I've seen the race 100 times over. Well, obviously not, because it's only once a year, but I've seen the race a lot. I enjoy watching the race, but there's nothing special like going and it was almost like when I was learning to, doing my Indy rookie laps, my coach was Al Unser. I mean, again, it's like, you just can't, those are things that, for a guy like me, even coming up into racing and even far retired from racing, it's still just so cool being around them.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's a funny thing, and it's so funny. We get IndyCar drivers on here, and of course the sport's called IndyCar, but there's a lot of other races and a lot of other tracks, and it always comes back to revolving around that one place. But what was the track, say, outside Indy that you really enjoyed running?
I had my best race in an IndyCar at Texas Motor Speedway. I had a really solid car. I think I was like 10th place with like 30 laps to go, and my car was just a rocket, and I was just driving around people. And that's when I caught Scott Sharp. I caught him like he was tied to a stake, but I just couldn't pass him, man. I don't know what, it's obviously a big drafting game. I almost passed him, and if I go back and look at the video and look, he moved on me a little bit, but so I relinquished and he won the race. But anyway, it was a fun race. I also had my worst race there. I left there in a helicopter one time. So when I got a compound fracture in my left leg and got knocked out, and ended up in Heartland Memorial there. So I would probably say Texas Motor Speedway. I always really liked what Eddie Gossage did down there. I did see he was leaving. I don't know. I guess I liked. Really had fun at like Richmond because it felt like it was almost like a road course. I mean, it's the only place I've ever driven an Indy car where I could be loose and comfortable with it. And, I think Brian Barnhart goes, "Hey man, you're getting sideways coming out of turn 2 there." I'm like, "Oh man, it feels great," but I guess that was a fun track for me. Uniquely, I thought Dover Downs was fun, but it was, certainly enough to get you dizzy. And when we raced there, it was 120 degrees. So, but I actually walked away from it saying that was fun. Trying to think where I didn't. So here's a funny story. One of my closest friends stood up at my wedding. Good buddy of mine, Curtis Francois. He bought Gateway Motor Speedway, or Gateway Motorsports Park, which used to be Gateway International Raceway. It was owned by Dover Downs. I believe they bought that race only trying to get a NASCAR race there so they could cash in, or they bought that track. They were never successful in doing so, and they shut it down, and it had 10-foot weeds growing through the grass. My buddy Curtis, who's a real estate developer, he's also he raced Indy Lights, or the Infinity Pro Series. He raced a couple races when I was racing IndyCar. So I hung out with them when they were doing their races, and he bought it. So I'm very involved with him. He's done such a great job of making it a St. Louis track instead of Madison, Illinois. He's really incorporated. He's got every single night there's drag strips running. You could take a station wagon and run it if you wanted to. So he's really opened it up to the public and made it really, really a fun place. Put a racing go-kart track in the middle. That you can rent carts that do 60. He's just been very successful about it. But I raced at Gateway 2 times in an IndyCar, and as much as I hate to say it, it was, it's the track that I had the most challenges with, because turns 1 and 2 were so incredibly tight, and turns 3 and 4 were just wide ass open. So I think I finished 10th there once, and I don't remember what my second race. I raced once for Larry Cahill and once for Sam Schmidt. But it was, of all the tracks, I'd probably rather not drive again. That's it. It's the one that I'm closest with, and I'm friends with them. I work with them. But anyway, everyone's got their preferences, and like I said, I really miss the fact that I didn't get to drive on at least one road course, because I used to be pretty good at road courses. So.
St. Louis was a track where you were sponsored by the Cardinals, right?
Yeah, I had a really cool car. It was I was working with a guy named Larry Albus, who was involved in racing in St. Louis. He started with with Carl Hogan when he ran, Hogan with Helio way back when, and he put together a deal with the Cardinals. We got Rawlings on the car. The car looked like a giant baseball. It's the coolest car I've ever driven. But it was on a track that it was not my favorite track, and I was not the best driver at it. So I could get around it, but I never got comfortable with it. And when you're not totally comfortable around a track for 200 laps, that's a long day.
I always thought that was interesting that Grosjean didn't want to run the Speedway, but he is going to run Gateway. And I think I said to Aaron, I said, they're looking at Gateway like that's an easy place to run. Well, wait till he puts the left front up on that little curb and it takes the nose. You know?
Gateway's not easy. It's a tough track. No. It's very technical. It's very, very, very technical, and it's hard. It's different from Indy. But they're both hard for different reasons. They're both challenging.
Right. Yeah, my brother ran Silver Crown cars, and he actually ran Richmond, and he ran Gateway. He loved Gateway in the Silver Crown. Of course, different type of racing, but
I think I saw Silver Crown at Gateway. I'm pretty sure they were sliding the car. Weren't they sliding the car sideways around 3 and 4? Is that?
Yeah, you get pretty sideways. You get it pretty sideways. You get so much speed down the front straightaway.
Yeah.
They were running. They were running. 180 plus down the front straightaway.
I remember seeing a man, and I'm like, that is crazy. I love it. I'd love to watch it, but that is nuts. Of course, things you don't know about. You can say that. If I knew about it, I'm sure everything's very calculated.
He really liked Richmond too. When you come off 2, it flattens out. It really has that real snap to it. Get on the back straightaway.
Well, that was where they kept saying, and I'm holding my phone with my hand. Otherwise, I'd kind of show you the move, but I'd come out of it, and my hands would just slowly kind of follow that, because you go over, and that's where they called me and said, "Dude, you better." Brian Barnhart said, "You better go in soon. You're about to crash. You're getting loose." I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not. I'm just kind of loose. I'm just freeing up over this hump here as you get on the. I can feel it as we're talking about it. But I don't think they're used to seeing the gloves up here on an Indy car. Because if they're up there, that means you got a problem.
Right. Yeah, both really neat tracks. So I really like them both.
They're fun. I short track. It's just it's just a different style. I mean, you get on the tracks. I got kind of annoyed there at the end where you're having to make the car not work to go fast. Like when we were running to Texas, it looked like the cars were set up to take off like an airplane. The front of the cars were 6 inches off the ground, and the backs were settled, and it was all to get the angle out of the rear wing and out of the tunnel, and to break the downforce because we had too much downforce for the track. So I thought that type of engineering to make the car not work as it was designed, I never was crazy about that. Because you'd just be driving around nose high everywhere to get speed, and the car never really felt good like that to me. Even though they were fast, it just felt weird.
Yeah, you and you had kind of alluded to, you ran the 500s. How many years did you run IndyCar total? Was it, or RL? Was it 6 years or 5 years?
Yeah, so I ran 6 years. I ran 6 years, but the last 2 years were Indy only.
Okay.
The prior year, so 1999, I ran a full season with Conti. 2000, I ran a full season with Treadway. 2001, I ran a full season with Cahill. 2002, I had that big accident and into the safer barrier opening day. Never recovered from that. Didn't make Indy. But then I ran a couple races for Greg Beck, and then I ran a race for Cheever at Texas at the end. So that would have been my 4th year. My 5th year, I ran Indy only with Panther, which was cool because, I mean, literally I got in. I think I had 4 laps around the track before I qualified it, and maybe a little more than 4, but not a lot. Got in and, just flew in the thing, and it just felt like it was stuck to the ground. It's like, God, if I could have a car like this every time, this would be fun. I mean, it was like last day, so I think I ended up starting, pretty far back, but we were qualified right at the same speed that Billy Boat and Sam qualified at, but just, where you end up if you qualify on the last day.
Sure.
And then the very last year, I ran Indy only with PDM. So, and that was not a great fun race. That was one where I went up there, said we're going to, we're leasing Robbie Gordon's car. It's going to be exactly as he rolled off the track. And then I walked in the garage and it didn't have any suspension on it. And I'm like, well, that's not exactly how it came off the track.
Right.
But it is. I don't blame anybody for it. But then Tim Wardrop, who I knew was in the garage, and I'm like, well, if he's helping us, I'm okay with it because he was my engineer at Treadway for a little while. Ari's old engineer. Car just never got good. I sat on the bubble, and it's like Tony Stewart said he was going to run, and I'm like, don't do this, Tony. You're going to ruin my week, my month, my year. And he ended up not doing it. But I don't know if you remember, they were teasing about doing it. And I don't think he could have ever done it because he had a contract with a different engine company or something like that. But it was enough to ruin my day, thinking about it. And after I qualified dead last, went out there. The car was pretty undrivable in the race, and it's like, guys, I'm going to come in and change something, or I'm going to crash the car. Like, I know you don't want me to come in. I don't want to come in either, but I also don't want to crash the car. And then it just kind of felt like everything was, that was the time. Like, you know what? I can't do this. I'm good at what I do, but I can't come in here straight to the Super Bowl and play like John Elway does, because all these other people have been playing the entire season, and they're here, and here I am getting in a car I've never driven, driving 5 laps and qualifying, and out here trying to compete. It's just not fair. And at that point, I realized, I'm gonna. That's when I decided I was probably gonna move on and not keep trying. And I kind of had already figured that out beforehand. Otherwise, I would have been trying to get a full-time ride. It's one thing to do a one-off race with Panther, who's got great cars and great equipment and knows what they're doing. It's another thing to do a one-off deal with a team that's on a shoestring budget, that they know what they're doing, but they just don't have the testing data. When I got in with Panther, they had 2 cars going around the track the entire month of May, so they knew everything. When I got in with PDM, they hadn't even put the car on the track. So here we go, we're getting on the track, and not only have I not seen it, the car hadn't seen it, and the car's not set up, and that kind of got me thinking, like, I'm all down. I love this sport. I want to do this sport. If I got a call from Roger or Chip, I would be back in a second. But I've done it. I don't need to do it just to say I'm doing it anymore. I mean, like, if I'd never done it, hey, I want to go race the Indy 500. This is kick ass. I can tell everybody I race the Indy 500. I would do it. But I've been in the Indy 500 with good cars. I've had some decent finishes, and I'm not going to go risk my life just to say I'm racing an Indy 500 and for whatever percentage of prize money. It's just not. At that point, it's not worth it. And that it took me doing that to learn it. But I think I made the right decisions. I'm still alive. I've got a family, and I'm on to stage 2 of life, and it's cool to be kind of past the stage, because now I can really appreciate, as you talked about, now I can really appreciate, look back and say, wow, I can't believe I did that. Wow, I can't believe,
Right.
I was doing that. When I was kind of still in it, not out of it, it's just like it's this weird, awkward feeling like, why aren't I racing still? Oh, I can't race, but now I'm just completely past it, and I can just appreciate it as a fan again, and that's where I started, as a fan, as somebody who really just, loves and respects the sport. And I can say, hey, that's my favorite driver. I don't have to say, why, well, he's not my favorite driver because I could beat him, because I really don't care anymore. I
Right.
love the sport, and I can really enjoy it from that standpoint.
When did you you were talking about Panther Racing? You tested. I know you raced with them in 2003, but when did you actually test with Panther?
So I mean, it was interesting. So coming off my Treadway season, which was the greatest season in the world. The one thing I tell everyone on these interviews is, it's so easy to drive a good car than it's like driving a good car fast is way easier than driving a bad car slow. And that car, every time I got in it, it was an easy top 5 car. I mean, there was one time in a Treadway car where it was terrible, and that was at Pikes Peak. And I every other time I had a good car, there was always another reason for why we didn't, if we didn't finish at the front. But we had a bunch of top 5s that year. So I at some point, John Barnes and I started talking, and there was an open Panther seat, and for the seat, it was going to be myself or Sam Hornish. And I've raced with Sam, and I'm friends with Sam, and I haven't talked to him forever, but I came up with Sam in Formula 2000. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, so I'm going to get a chance. I think Sam at the time had really only driven, some one-offs for PDM. And you know what? We had these tests set up in Kentucky for the seat. It rained. Tried one more time, like a couple weeks later, it rained. During that time frame, Sam got in the car, pressed him, and they hired him. And I never got the test. So, I was a little salty because I never got a chance. I feel like I could have had that ride, but at the same time, what could have happened if I got that ride? I mean, would it have automatically meant that I won the first race at Phoenix and gone to race for Penske and then so on? No, I don't think it means that at all. I mean, you got to just kind of take what you get for what it's worth. I mean, there was a time where Tony Renna was the luckiest guy in the world, and everyone was envious of him because he got to drive for Chip Ganassi, and now he had that unfortunate accident. So I look back and say, when you go through a sport where it literally is life and death. Hey, I'm still here, man. So I couldn't have made the wrong decisions. I can't complain about what happened because here I am. I'm here talking about it, and I can look back and say, man, I learned a lot. I traveled. I made a lot of friends, and it formed. It was really formed who I am in a lot of ways today. From a competitive standpoint, I'm in a very competitive business now, and I don't look at it any differently than I look at going out on the racetrack. I'm going to win because I'm going to be better than the other guy, and it's the same stuff. It's preparation. What did Roger Penske say? Luck is where preparation meets opportunity, and that's the same. That's not just in racing; that's in everything. But being in a competitive environment like that, that doesn't go away. That stays. It's just it shows itself in different ways.
I was asking about the Panther Racing thing because I remember around that time, if you remember, Weldon did some tests with them, and actually he with Panther, and I think he raced in 2 races for Panther, and one was in Texas.
Yeah, I spotted for him. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I spotted for him. It was in Phoenix, I think. He was in the blue Panther car. So that was after, I think in 2005. You know what? I can't even believe I didn't remember this. So after I said I stayed away from it. 2004, I raced, and it might have actually been 2004 because I only raced Indy that year. So I went to Phoenix. I think it was, it might have even been 2003 before I drove for Panther. John invited me out to spot. Pancho Carter and I were the spotters. Dan drove it was blue. It was a blue car from what I recall for Panther. might have been Menards. I just can't even. I'm having a hard time remembering. But
it would have been. So that would have had to been 2002 because 2003 was his first year with Andretti.
Okay, so it might have been 2002. I think so. It would have been the race after we didn't race after Indy with Cahill, and I skipped a couple of races. So it was one of them. I was out there, in the Panther. Yeah, it would have been 2002. I remember spotting for him. I thought it was Phoenix, but it might have been Texas. It was Texas, actually. Now that I recall, I'm starting to remember restaurants that I went to that trip, and it was cool working with Poncho and getting to work with Panther. So that was before I got to drive for John, and maybe that was had something to do with it. But I do remember spotting for Dan, and yeah, and I also did some radio work with Mike King, which was fun, some color stuff, which I think that might have been 2003, maybe. Going back on the story where I said I stayed away from it, I didn't really completely stay away from it. So, yeah, so that's right. I do remember that now. He drove for Panther before I did.
That always racing's such a strange thing because when you're first coming up, man, you're just looking for those opportunities. And then after you get to that certain level of opportunity, and for whatever reason, you see it happen to guys all the time, happening to you, and it's happened to 95% of the guys who's ever driven. Then something happens, and then it kind of, the opportunities, they'll get it, they lose a really good deal, but then they get another deal that's pretty good. At least on the surface, looks great. And then you start getting these, that might go away, and then you're just kind of looking, and then you, like you said, then you end up, you're kind of carrying your helmet, you're trying to make deals, you're trying to make something work, and it is that thing where when is enough? When is it that time? Hey, I either I'm going to drive this level of equipment or I'm not going to do it, and I think that's just such a hard question. I would think for any competitor to come across, because unlike any other sport, this sport depends so much on the entire program. I
can tell you, like, from my standpoint, like, I'll just give you just a little story, and I can't remember who it was, but I remember when I first started racing, I was the guy that, I remember I was going to pass a guy, and I said, I'm going under this guy. He's not going to turn down on me. I know he just had a baby or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm, and of course I would go under him. He didn't, I just passed him. He let me by. When I knew I was that guy, that's when it's like, all right, like I'm not going to crash to keep this position. And that guy probably would, that's passing me, that 22-year-old kid. So maybe that's time. Now you get guys like Eddie Cheever and Allister Jr. that they never, whatever the mechanism that caused me to think like that happened, it never worked. It never worked for them, and they stayed in until they were driving I think close to 50. I mean, if I'm, or at least well into their 40s. And they never really aged as drivers because they were just as good when they were older as they were younger.
Scott Dixon.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, Scott Dixon seems like one of the kids that I would have said, because I think, I'm 47. What's Scott, like late 30s, or is he 40? I don't know.
He's in his 40s, isn't he?
If he's in his 40s, he just now in his 40s.
Okay.
He's 39 to 40.
Yeah. I mean, and so
40.
Those guys, as the old guys, is nuts, right? So because they were all really young when I was in, and man, what an amazing career he's had. I mean, he does not mess around. He wins races. It's nice to see some of the guys that I used to race with. I mean, for a while, I'm just trying to think, which just is hilarious. And if I can find the picture, if you remind me, I'll send it to you. I've got a picture from when I was racing in Gateway in 2002. And Connor Daly was a buddy at the time, but he was 12 years old, right? So, because Doug and Beth were friends, and Connor would come over, and it was Sam Schmidt's team, and everyone's like a family, man. So you're on different teams, but I felt like that was the case, and maybe it's the case after the kart teams came over. But before that, the IRL was a big family. Everybody was helping everybody out, and I just know that for a fact. And I'm not saying it didn't happen after we got, everybody got back together, but that's what I remember. And I remember, Connor was hanging out in my pits, and we were talking about Xbox because I'm a gamer. I still game, and I know those, you probably see those guys all playing their games online and stuff. But I just started dating. I just started dating my current wife. Her sister was in town with his boyfriend, or with her boyfriend, and we're all going to go back to my parents' house, and after the race, and we were going to drink beer and swim in the pool or whatever. And he's like, "Hey, can I come over and play Xbox?" I'm like, "Dude, absolutely, but you better check with your parents. You're only 12." And so they said, "Yeah, he can go with you guys." And of course, obviously, I'm going to be responsible. I'm not going to be irresponsible with the 12-year-old, but I got a picture of him, him and I together, and he looks like he's 12. Standing at my parents' house after our gateway race. So now I was screaming when, at the TV when Connor was leading the race this year. I mean, it would be so absolutely cool. He's such a good dude. And I mean, I'm always going to root for him, but it's crazy. I used to be able to say, "Hey, I used to race with that guy. I'm going to root for him." But now I'm saying Connor was like a fan and a friend, like when he was 12 years old. And, I want him to win so badly. Now, granted, when he went out and Helio won, that's about the second best thing that could have happened, in my opinion, watching, because that was amazing. Our whole house was up screaming at the TV for that last few laps of this most recent race.
Yeah, it was a great moment. I was there, sitting in a different place than Aaron was, but it was a great moment. Be able to see somebody become a 4-time winner in person was a great moment. And like you said, seeing Connor, and like I told Aaron, I just turned to Robin, and I told her, I said, today might be Connor's day, because I mean, he looked good. And and I mean, it was like 3 laps later he hit that wheel, which obviously wasn't his fault. But
Right.
and I felt really bad for him, because again, there's a guy who's worked and worked and worked and worked and worked to stay in the sport. He could have gave up. He could have easily walked away 3 years ago. And he's driven for free. He's driven multiple cars for different teams. And
he stayed in it, man. Like, it takes perseverance.
Yeah.
Easy sport to stay in, that I can picture having the U.S. Air Force. I mean, how cool is that? And now he's leading the race. He led more laps than anybody, I think. So.
Right. Yeah. It just, hats off to him, man, because you got to have thick skin to do what he's done.
Yeah. I got to tell you, being in that position, and there were times where I, like even when I was driving pretty consistently, it'd be like December or January, and the first race is in March, and I never ride. I'm like, it's just the most, it's just brutal calling these people saying, "Hey, can I, what can I do to drive for you?" And you're just, I don't want to say degrading yourself, but you're just like, "I'll do anything, man. Like, I really, really want to drive. I will do anything." And if, and then I'll give me a chance to get out in front of, and once I do it, I'll get out there, I'll impress someone, and then the things will happen. Because there were a couple of years where I had a secured ride, but like, I know I'm going to finish the season. Like, if I'm ever, I mean, what a guy, and I feel bad he got kind of left behind by the sport. He spent his own money. He went out there, and there was no guarantee we were going to the next race. So while we did finish a full season, it's just an unsettling feeling, not knowing if you're going to have a ride or not having something super secure. So what Connor's gone through, I mean, and I think, others have done this,
Sure.
it before, but it's really easy to get, to feel like it's time to let go, or it's time, I've tried this long enough, and he didn't give up. And now look where he is. I can't imagine if I just can't imagine why a big team won't pick him up and pay for him. And maybe they will. And he's obviously got the talent. Racing is smoke and mirrors. You may think, it's hard to who's paying for it, hard to know who. It's most people, comprehend, in terms of, why. I don't know the answers, but I mean, there's big, which there's, the paid drivers on the team, and they don't study in public. So it's really hard to figure out who's what or where and who's bringing what. Or what I would love to see Connor get in a position where he can have a secured ride and feel comfortable, because it kind of takes away from being able to do your job, not knowing if you're going to get if you're going to have a job the next week, right? So
and if you crash, then you're worried about, oh my gosh, I crashed. Whether it's your fault or somebody else's fault. I mean, it's racing.
Someone's got to pay for it, and the guy that can go back and sit in the garage that has to pay for it ain't going to be happy. I mean, even if it's not your fault, and it's like,
And you were talking, and the phone kind of cut out. Who would you say you drove for, and he was spending his own money?
Larry Cahill.
Yeah, he owned sprint cars and that. That Beechler driven, and he come to Speedway with Beechler, right? Yeah.
He came to the Speedway with Donnie, and he was a guy that loved racing. I mean, this was his hobby. I mean, his hobby was $2 or $3 million a year, and we were part of it as drivers. But he was the guy. I mean, like, it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for him. And I'm an adult. Like, if we crash, like, I can't be like, oh, Larry, please spend your money and buy a new one. I mean, like, I'm only going to do it if he wants to do it, because it's not fair to me. Because he came in and was a great team owner. And I look, I mean, as anything grows and regains popularity, it's going to. I just feel bad. There's a lot of guys that really propped up the IRL and IndyCar racing that are no longer around. And it's just the evolution, but you got to feel bad for him. Fred Treadway, look what he did. I mean, John Barnes, why isn't he involved in racing anymore? Maybe it's by choice, maybe it's because they just couldn't stay in with all the mega money, but it's a lot. I think most of the teams that were around and that were great when I was in are kind of no longer. I mean, because I don't have the answer as to why that's the case, because but anyway, it's just a growing, evolving sport.
Yeah, it has always cost a lot of money, and it just and we can't get around that. Everybody tries to think of a way to get around it, and it's really hard to do.
100%. I love seeing speaking of Connor, I love seeing Ed Carpenter and his team there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
They're always fast at Indy, and one of these days they're going to win it. I mean.
Yeah. Kind of a question we always ask on this show is I like to ask a driver, I always like to give them the opportunity to speak onto someone who may have helped them through their career that maybe people don't know about. I mean, it could obviously be their parents or whomever, but it also gives them a chance to maybe speak about someone who's maybe behind the scenes that people don't know about. Is there somebody like that in your career, or would you say that your parents were your biggest influence?
No, I think there's definitely a guy in my career that I could say it. There's a few of them, but I'll start off by saying my mom still. I remember I said I kind of just check in on racing. Like, she TiVos and watches every single IndyCar race. She's the one calling me, oh, did you see this? I'm like, no, Mom, I didn't see it. She loves it. That's her 100% passion. As a parent now, I don't know how my parents watch me out there, because I couldn't fathom it with my kids. I just don't think I could do it. But I would say, other than my parents and my family who supported me getting there, it wasn't free. I know my dad, obviously, and my family, that put a lot out there for me to get started, and that was certainly a risk. And I look back and I say, now that I'm responsible, I look back and I say, wow, you did that. You must have been crazy to put out that much money for me to go play on a racetrack. Because I'd say, my kid asked me, I'd tell him, go run around the block or something, go play baseball or whatever. Sort of joking there, but there's a gentleman that helped me out. There was a time where I didn't have a ride, and he put together a ride for me. His name was Ray Parsons. I don't know if you know of Ray. He partnered with Sam Schmidt. He got involved with Sam Smith because he's also fully quadriplegic. And so Ray came in. He supported supported Sam's team, and then he supported me for a couple of races when I didn't have a ride. And I still, he's what a good dude. In terms of I didn't see him much, but after I finished racing, I just talked to him a month ago or so. So he was helpful. He was just a big racing guy. Loved racing. Sam is for trying to be able to walk again, essentially. And there was a guy that helped me my first year, Fred Asbell. You may not know, he was a marketing guy that put together the whole Energizer deal, which got me out on the track. That funded Dave and my tournament, or Dave Conti and my team. Fred Trev. I mean, just even in my 4-year, 5-year, 6-year career, whatever it was, there's almost too many supporters along the way to name. We're all there, and none of it may have happened. It may not have happened without all of their participation.
Sure.
That goes down to the guy that runs the trucking company. My first year racing, one of our sponsors, Reekman Transportation, and Dana Reekman drove my car every single. He took off work, real work. He's hauling stuff, and he hooked up to our trailer, and he hauled our trailer everywhere. And and that may seem small, but that's a couple $100,000 worth of value there.
Sure.
And that's just a bunch of a lot of support. I mean, I got to say the highest nod goes to my mom. And just because of her passion, and she's the one who probably convinced my dad to help me out, there at the beginning. But there's just a whole lot of folks along the way, and if I had a little time, I could put together a list. I give you guys a complete list, but I think I've kind of shared, my thoughts. It's not just one person. It takes a what's the word? I think that's my answer.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's a great answer.
Since 2004, you did at least one of the SVRA races at IMS, right?
Yeah, that was fun. I that I did that once I've this career where crap, should I be doing this? What if I got hurt? What if I can't run my regular company? Which would be problematic. You know what? I took that with just, I'm going to have some fun. I'm in somebody else's equipment. I'm not going to go screw it up. Winning this thing today means absolutely zero to me. And which it did. Plus, I think they gave Al Unser a Corvette with like 500 more horsepower than anybody else. So I don't think I ever had a chance to win. I ran a guy named Scott Blacklet was his name. I didn't know him beforehand, and I haven't talked to him since. But what a gentleman! He let me drive his car. I think it was a 60s. Had a great time. Only finished towards the back because I wasn't gonna. I did see a couple guys tearing up other people's cars, and I'm just like, man, that's not for me. I would never do that. I think.
It, like you were just talking about your mom and Aaron, and I've said this on the show so many times, and I said it on the very first introductory show, the mothers, especially the mothers, but the mothers and wives of the drivers, and that, man, this I don't think this sport could function without them. I just don't, because they're the ones who nurture so much, so often. They're the ones that nurture the driver growing up. They're the ones who, the mothers are, in my experience with it, the mothers are more enamored with it than the fathers are on some level. They're the real kind of pit bulls of the deal. They really drive it home.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly rings true for me. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my mom. I wouldn't be racing I never would have raced my first car if it weren't for my mom. And they didn't miss. My dad missed one race because he had to work in Colorado Springs. My mom did not miss one time I was on the track ever in any car, really.
Yeah. It's really a lot of people. Just as a casual person, probably think it's always the fathers, but really it's the mothers. in so many cases.
Most people think that about me. Like, what, why'd you get into racing? What kind of cars your dad have? I was like, shit. My dad was driving a Cadillac DeVille. My mom was driving a 911, right? But he obviously came around to learn it and understand it. Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you this is something I just thought of. Do you ever have like you were talking about, getting other people in insurance, the companies you're involved with, kind of interested in racing. Do you ever talk to people and you start talking about the 500 and you're like, yeah, I raced in it, and they just kind of look at you funny, like not believing that you actually raced in the Indy 500?
It's funny because I don't ever like I don't lead with that or bring that up or whatever.
Right.
But if I find that someone's from Indianapolis, I'll just say like, hey, because I don't want to come across like I'm bragging or anything. I'm just
right, exactly.
But you might find this interesting. I used to race. I race in an Indy 500. If you're from Indianapolis, maybe you've heard of that. And a lot of times, people are like, "Holy crap, man, that's the coolest thing ever." And other times they're like, "What's the Indy 500?" So when it's the latter answer, oh boy, it's like the thing about, you guys know this about race fans. There's not that many just regular casual fans. They're either die hard or
nothing.
They don't know anything about it. So it's not like I'm in St. Louis. Cardinals baseball. Like one of my closest friends is Jim Evans, the old center fielder for the Cardinals. Like, he can't even walk through St. Louis. He has to wear a hat way down low because they'll just go. And even like people that don't watch that much baseball would know who he is. But racing, it's just a different. It's either just absolute hardcore fans or I flip through it on TV and I don't know what the drivers look like, type thing.
Now, did you have to go on the reality show when Jim Evans was on that reality show?
It's funny he mentioned he mentioned me in one of the TV shows. I think his wife at the time was talking to him about her nervousness about giving birth or something, and his response was something like, "Do you know Robby's going to get a G200, which is an airplane, because I'm a big airplane guy." They set you up. They set him up to just look like just the biggest asshole, no matter what the situation. And his ex-wife, her dad is a very close friend of mine, and they basically tell you in the contract, we're going to try to use what you say to make you look bad. I mean, they don't put it like that, but
right, sure,
those things are dangerous to go on. Anyway.
Yeah, well, as drama sells a lot better than happiness. So
there's no question about that. I think it'd be kind of fun, but I'm sure they would do everything that that they can do to create drama where it doesn't exist, and all of a sudden it snowballs, and it's like
all of a sudden what was kind of half fake all of a sudden becomes real, and then you got to deal with it. Yeah.
I hope most people remember Jimmy as the best center fielder ever to play for the Cardinals, and probably should have been a Hall of Famer, versus that TV show. That was nothing positive about that crap.
Like I said, I grew up near that area, so I listened to KMOX and listened to all the games and growing up and just, man, Cardinals play such a huge part. People don't realize, man, if you don't grow up in that area, the Cardinals play a huge role in your life, whether you're hating the Cardinals or if you're loving the Cardinals.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, man. I remember watching, I went to as a young kid, I went to, I think, a game in 1982 and a game in 1986. Or was it 1985? They were definitely went in 82, and I think I still have a ticket from when I went. I mean, Cardinals, it's a part of our life being from here. I mean, the
Whitey Herzog years and Ozzie and man, just amazing times.
Pretty cool. And the cool thing about racing, even though racing it's hard, it's I think even when I was racing actively, it was hard to get a write-up in the Post-Dispatch just because there weren't a big paper that knew much about it. It's really hard to get racing out there when you've got the Cardinals, the Rams, which we had at the time, the Blues. I mean, and it's like we're very much a stick and ball town. But the cool thing about it is because I was what I did, I got to meet a lot of those folks. And
sure,
I remember meeting Whitey Herzog and of course met all the players. But it was definitely we're in a great place for sports still, even without the Rams.
Right. Well, that was a disaster in the end. That was something else. So you said that you're big into flying. You like to fly? Is that
a little bit?
You said that you like to fly planes?
Yeah, I'm like, that's my hobby now. I'm a big aviation enthusiast. We've owned airplanes in the company, and we currently own one now that I'm typed in, and I go to recurrent training for a week every single year. And so that's what gets me excited now. Is flying airplanes. Although I'm starting to get to the point where it's more comfortable in the back of the airplane. So, with somebody else flying, but I'm not there yet. But I got to say I'm getting close, just because stress related to life. But the other thing I like about flying is it takes all that away, because anywhere I go, no matter what I do, when I'm on the ground, people can reach me on my phone, and I got blowing up, and there's always something to stress about. When I'm flying a jet, at 490 knots, I just can't. I don't think about anything else. To me, the ultimate relaxation is pouring a cup of coffee, leveling off at 41,000 feet or 40,000 feet, and hauling some ass. Even though it doesn't look like it when you're up in the air, but you are.
Right. We had Paul Goldsmith on, and Paul ran Indy cars, in 50s and early 60s. He's the last man to win at Daytona Beach on the beach in stock cars.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But Paul's was a pilot. He's 95 now.
I think he still flies. Well, he did. I know a couple years ago. So he's still he's like the president of the airport up by Maryville. It's Maryville Griffith Airport.
Yeah.
And he's
it's a big crossover. I mean, a lot of race car drivers. I did an interview with someone the other day. He said Dario Franchitti flies. I think Dario might fly helicopters. So
yeah. If
I recall properly, but it's just a natural transition. It's like we like toys. Right. Race car drivers like toys, and an airplane or a helicopter is just a big ass toy that's fun to play with.
Well, you guys like to be in control too.
100%. That's
1,000%. That's a big part of it too, because those planes, you got so much to be in control of. Yeah. Every race car driver I've ever met enjoys a level of being in control.
I can't argue with you there. I'm terrible when I'm out of control. Like people are like, I want to go ride in that 2-seater. I'm like, you wouldn't catch me dead in the back seat of that 2-seater if I'm not driving it.
Right.
But it's there's a huge aspect of control that I think goes along with being a race car driver.
Yeah, I agree.
Retired race car driver.
I'm friends with PJ Jones, and I hate riding with him, but I would never drive with him in the car. Yeah. I mean, I did once, and that was enough. You know what I'm saying? I always just hand him the keys. If anytime that it's my car, I just hand him the keys.
Yeah. If you guys talk to PJ regularly, tell him I said hello. I haven't seen him for a couple of years. Good dude.
Yeah, we talked to his son Jagger was on first episode, and talked to him and Parnell and that a little bit. But yeah. So yeah, PJ's all right. PJ's an interesting cat, that's for sure.
I'm trying to remember who he drove for when I was racing with him.
He drove for. Of course, he drove for Gurney and Cart.
Well, I remember he drove for that. Yeah, that.
And then he drove for Patrick. And then he drove for Menard.
He drove for Beck
later
Beck. On in his career.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
He drove for Beck at the Speedway. He drove for Menard at the Speedway, and unfortunately crashed, and he hurt his neck in that deal. Yeah. And he tried running. He ran the Speedway. He tried running the Speedway 4 times. He crashed at once. He missed it once, and then he qualified twice. I think that's how it went.
Gotcha.
Well, Robby, thank you so much for coming on. It's funny since when we started this, like, I figured we'd be able to get some people, but almost every single person I've reached out to, everyone's been really accommodating. They say something similar to what you said, that they don't really get to talk about racing much, so they definitely
Well, it's been
enjoy.
fun talking to you guys. So if you ever want to talk to me again, just reach out again. I
Hey,
enjoy it. I don't get to talk. I talk so much about things that I have to for work.
Right.
I love these casual chats, and I appreciate you guys having me on. I'd love to see it. I don't know if you can send me a link or whatever.
Yeah,
for when you
absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll
Okay.
send you a link, and then man, we'll have you on again. Absolutely.
Right
Hopefully, if not this year, next year, we're going to maybe start doing some mobile stuff.
Okay.
And if we go to Gateway, man, we'll just have you on in person.
Look me up, man. I'll be here.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right, gentlemen.
Hey,
Appreciate
take care,
it.
Robby. It was a pleasure, bud. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.